Oh boy, I didn't know it was going to be this good. Coming into this game, I expected it to be good, but as a person suffering from open world fatigue, I didn't expect it to defy my expectations. But not only did it do that, it pushed itself to a place that only a few open world games occupy. There's so much I appreciate and love about this game, and it's a very big game, so without further ado, let's discuss Ghost of Tsushima. Ghost of Tsushima has many influences in its presentation, in its narrative, and in its gameplay, and it wears its heart on its sleeve. It feels like the developers put so much care into making sure the game honored its influences and executed the aspects it copies respectfully and creatively. This game feels like a love letter to Japan, its culture, Japanese cinema, and open world game design. Ghost of Tsushima takes place during the first Mongol invasion of Japan in the 13th century. The story follows Lord Jin Sakai, a samurai who survived Khotun Khan's invasion of Tsushima Island. It follows Jin's quest to take back his home against overwhelming odds by creating an almost Batman-like persona, the myth of the ghost, a spirit who strikes fear in the heart of Tsushima's enemies and disobeys samurai warfare traditions. The story in my experience was superb and among the most well told in the open world space. It features excellent characters and really shows the horror, desperation, and effect conflict has on the people who partake and suffer from its destruction. Although the Mongols are clear-cut the bad guys of the story, Ghost of Tsushima carefully portrays the complexity of the politics and people who live on Tsushima, and does a great job of showing this world contains many shades of grey as well. This game clearly takes influence from Japanese cinema, and the work of Akira Kurosawa specifically, with how it does its shot selection, how it animates its combat, and how it builds tension. This game feels like a samurai film that you control and navigate. And what a world to navigate. Tsushima is very much the heart of this game. Jin's entire goal is to protect his home. This is the land that his family has lived on for generations, and it's everything he's ever known. He clearly loves it, and this game made me fall in love with it as well. Tsushima is beautiful. It might be the most beautiful open world I have ever had the pleasure of visiting in a game. There are so many times while playing this game that I would just pause and just take in the image. So many times I witnessed such beautiful imagery, I wish I could just print it out and post it around my house. The visual design of its world to the graphic design of its menus and HUD are among Ghost of Tsushima's greatest accomplishments. So let's get into the nitty-gritty of what this game is like to play. Just like the game's visual and thematic influences are clear, so are the games that inspired Ghost of Tsushima's core design. The Witcher 3 and Zelda Breath of the Wild's influence on this game are undeniable, and both games influence different aspects of Ghost of Tsushima. The Witcher 3's influence comes in the form of how Ghost of Tsushima handles its quest design and how it tells its narratives. Ghost of Tsushima has several dozen side quests along its main narrative. Just like The Witcher 3, Ghost of Tsushima tries to provide some sort of narrative to every single side quest, be it a simple single objective quest or a multi-part arc. Each is told like a short story and usually has some sort of twist or moral to the story. Many of these draw inspiration from Japanese folklore, similar to how The Witcher remixes Slavic folklore for its many tales. And overall, Tsushima succeeds here with most of its stories being interesting and the game using unique style choices to give its storytelling a distinct flair. Things like the title card to every quest when it begins, and the wide shots used for the low-budget character interactions go a long way in setting Ghost of Tsushima's tone. Also, I just think they're a smart and elegant way to hide blemishes. Zelda's influence comes in the form of how Ghost of Tsushima utilizes its open world and how it provides its less directed gameplay moments. Like Zelda, Tsushima tries to make its world be filled with a wide variety of gameplay opportunities and secrets, with the ultimate goal of exploration being player-driven and consciously trying to avoid the world feeling like a long checklist of tasks to complete. In order to accomplish this, Ghost of Tsushima avoids having a compass or constant objective markers on the screen. This game employs the wind, distant smoke, and animals to provide guidance and make exploration feel natural. However, these great innovative features are undercut by two issues that stop the exploration of Ghost of Tsushima from achieving its goal. The first is the question marks on the world map. The game places question marks on nearby undiscovered points of interest, and this significantly reduces the sense of discovery when you find a new location. Eventually, it just becomes a game of clear out all the question marks from the map to find all the locations. Hence, it ends up making the locations a checklist. Number 2, Most activities at the locations are incredibly simple, sometimes as simple as walking up to a place and hitting R2. The rewards for these activities quickly become unrewarding and unfulfilling. This makes it easy to get burnt out when you're trying to clear all the question marks off the map. My recommendation is only do the activities you enjoy. Skip the rest. Doing so made my overall experience feel less like a drag. Before we move on to the next facet of Ghost of Tsushima's design, I want to highlight the horses in this game. The horses are among the best controlling horses I've ever seen, and probably the best horses since D-Horse in Metal Gear Solid 5. They're easy to control and place exactly where you want them. They don't have issues with hopping fences and always act as expected. And lastly, these horses are the first horses since D-Horse that will match your speed and velocity if you call them while running. I don't know why this isn't a feature in other games. It seems like a no-brainer. It makes your horse seem way more helpful when you're trying to chase someone. When you aren't exploring or talking to shopkeepers, you most likely will be fighting Mongols. The game generally offers you the freedom to handle Mongol encounters in a stealthy or forthright manner. When pursuing a stealthy playstyle, the gameplay is very similar to Assassin's Creed or the Batman Arkham games. Your character has instant takedown moves and can use their superior agility to navigate up and around enemy territory. The AI is basically deaf until you're right next to them, and their vision cone is also limited as far as vertical sightlines go. I personally found stealth to be too easy and simplistic for my liking, but I can see fans of the previously mentioned games enjoying the stealth. I personally preferred handling situations with a mixed or straight to combat approach, as I found myself enjoying the combat more than I originally expected. I predicted this game's combat to be very Batman Arkham inspired. However, to my surprise, the game that I was reminded of the most was a game on the PlayStation 1 called Bushido Blade. That's because just like Bushido Blade, the combat is oriented around stances. Jin has a total of 4 stances, and knowing how to effectively switch between them to cut through your enemy's defenses form the core of the combat. This paired with an extensive set of bows and other gadgets can lead you to being a deadly, swift, and destructive force of Mongol extermination. I played the game mostly on hard and the newly added lethal difficulty, and I recommend these to any fan of melee action games. At times the game can feel super easy even on the harder difficulties. The enemies die from only a few hits, and the same applies to you. So even though you do cut through waves of Mongols without a sweat, one mistake can often result in your death or near death, which puts an emphasis on being consistent and efficient at fighting. The combat can feel overwhelming at the start, and there's some button inputs that take a little bit of getting used to, but once you've mastered the combat, it can look like a choreographed action scene every time combat plays out, and you really start to feel like the legend everyone on the island hears stories about. Aside from standard Mongol groups, you also partake in a significant number of one-on-one duel encounters which play out similar to boss fights. I don't think these were executed as well as the regular combat. That's because every enemy in a duel encounter is a variation of one of 3 fighting styles, and they share a vast majority of their moves. Stance switching isn't very important in duels, and gadgets cannot be used, which make them play out similarly, and they can be cheesed pretty easily later in the game. I think fewer, more diversified duels would have worked better. Ghost of Tsushima is a massive game with excellent visual presentation, an engrossing story, and a stylish combat system that makes you feel like you're playing out your own samurai legend. Although it doesn't nail every aspect of its design, it has so much style and love put into its construction that ultimately it overcomes its shortcomings. If this is the PlayStation 4's swan song, then Sucker Punch produced a fitting conclusion to what has been a strong and truly dominant generation of exclusive titles.